Today we're going to be building a deck, 12 foot by 12 foot simple deck off the back of this house. No stairs, just a straightforward deck. Now the first step in any deck building project is going to be coming up with a design and planning out how your deck is going to look and come together. Now this is a very simple deck, but you can get some pretty complex decks in deck building projects. And one thing I will say is Simpson Strong-Tie has a great resource. They actually have deck planner software that you can go and use for free to develop and create your deck so you know what needs to be done to make it come to life. Now, most decking projects go like this, where essentially you're going to start by laying out your deck exactly where it's going to go. Use some straight lines and some Pythagorean theorem to make sure that you get that deck nice and square. Once you've got the layout done, then you can begin digging the holes for your posts to set in. Once we get those holes dug, then we can call our local inspector and have him come out, inspect those holes, and get us the approval to continue on with the deck project. With the footings inspected and passed, we can proceed by putting those posts in place. But first we need to install our actual footing, which is 6 inches of 16-inch round concrete. And the way that we did that was by simply adding a couple bags of concrete, or mixing those first and then pouring those into the hole and allowing those to cure overnight. Once those fully cured, then we could come back and start setting our 6x6 post on top of that footing and backfilling around those, making sure that we continue to keep that nice square deck that we laid out in the first place. With the posts installed, then we can move on to setting the beam and the ledger board. Now, in order to get the beam strength that we needed for this deck, we needed to use 3 2x10s to span 12 feet. I only wanted 2 posts, so we wanted to make sure that we had enough of a beam to carry that load all the way across that 12-foot span. After we figured out the exact height that our posts would need to be cut at, then we go ahead and cut those posts and set those beams in place. Now the post gets cut to the appropriate height. Obviously we got to take into account the thickness of our decking, the height of our joists, and then the beam height as well. So we cut that post based on that and where we want the deck to finish against the house. And then the top of the post get capped with these 6x6 post caps from Simpson Strong-Tie, and essentially these anchor, they're adjustable since there's 2 of them, 1 on each side of the beam, and these anchor into the post, or from the post to the beam connection. That gives you that nice solid connection between the 2 so that doesn't shift. Now the beam is assembled with these 4-inch SDWS screws, timber screws from Simpson Strong-Tie. And the good thing about these are they're super easy to install. Obviously you don't have to pre-drill, you don't have to through bolt it, you just simply screw these in place, and they've got a crazy amount of strength. And I trust those guys at Simpson Strong-Tie. They put a lot of research and development into these products to make sure that it's exactly what it needs to be or more. Now when it comes to installing the ledger, you kind of got to make sure you take some things into account. Obviously on the inside, we've already finished the inside of the house, so there's drywall and insulation, spray foam, all that stuff. So we can't through bolt it. That would be kind of the ideal connection. Now luckily Simpson Strong-Tie came out, or has these SDWS screws, which we used on the beam as well. These are a stainless steel version, and these are 5 inches long. The reason we went with a 5-inch is because obviously we've got an 1.5 2x10 here, and then we've got the sheathing, which is the Zip R sheathing. This is the, it has 1 inch of foam behind it. So you've got another 1.5 inches of sheathing, and then you've got your bond, or your floor joist that's on the inside that we're actually connecting to. So these SDWS screws will sink nice and flush. There's no pre-drilling, no through bolting. You just lag those in. They're the equivalent of a 1/2 inch lag. So they're going to give us all the strength we need to hold this ledger board in place and make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Once we got the ledger in place, then with the ledger and the beam, we can start by setting our joist and the joist hangers. Obviously using 2x10 joist hangers, and we're going to be using the connector screws from Simpson Strong-Tie instead of the nails, just to make things easier. Now this is probably the moment you guys have all been waiting for. We actually wanted to make sure that the bottom or below our deck, the deck space below, was protected from the elements, and by that I mean essentially rain. We wanted to keep everything dry underneath that deck as much as possible. Now I know we're gonna have some wind blow the rain in, but we wanted to eliminate the water coming through the deck and dripping down below on you. So for that, we went with Duxxbak Decking. Now this is a very unique product in a sense that it actually has a very unique profile to where any water that drains over the edge gets trapped in this little channel and then drains out. Now typically they want the water to drain away from the house, but I really wanted to pitch the deck alongside the house and collect it in a gutter and take it away. So what we did was we actually sloped the deck 1/8 of an inch per foot over that 12 feet that goes to the side. So down the side of the deck, the water will run off, and if any collects in that channel, it will also be taken away and out the side of the deck. So as far as installing this decking, it goes down really easy. Essentially, this unique profile, this is the trough that captures the water in the decking, and this locks into this side of the previous board. So, and then you screw these 1 5/8 inch trim head screws on a 45 into this groove right there. Essentially, this board just snaps in right here, and then we screw into that. Now I've gone ahead and done a 1 inch overhang on all sides. This right here is nice and flush. So now you just come in on a 45, and you don't even have to sink that screw. You just snug it up nice and tight, and it's locked in place. Basically 95% of the water will run off the surface, hence the name Duxxbak, but any water that gets into that groove will fall into this channel right here, and since this deck is pitched, it's gonna run out that end down there, collect in a gutter, and be taken away. So one unique thing about the Duxxbak decking is that obviously, like I've said before, the water that does manage to get in between the boards collects in this little U-shaped channel right here and then flows out. The problem is we don't want to look at this outside cut of this decking. So luckily Duxxbak also is a end cap, and what this does is it actually fits over top of this board, yet leaves this little weep hole here to allow water to drain out of that hole as it should. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and install the rest of these and get this all nice and cleaned up. So for the railing, we're going to be going with the KeyLink. KeyLink Railing is the manufacturer, but I like them because everything's made in America and it is very well made. But we're doing the cable railing, horizontal cables, and the thing that I love about it is that everything is black. All the fittings are black, the cable's black, so it'll essentially disappear, which is what we're looking for. But we're going to start in the corner here. This is an end post, which means this has the capability of being able to kind of tension those cables inside of this post, which is great because there's not going to be any hardware outside of the post like some of the other cable railings. Now they've got a leveling plate here, so we've already gone ahead and laid out exactly where we want this. I'm going to use a square to square it up. Now, I know these 2 screws are gonna go down into the end joist. We're gonna be using some 4-inch lag screws, so we'll go ahead and put those in. Now, the nice thing is, obviously you can see it's unlevel right now, but as we get this installed, now the other thing is I don't have my blocking in there because I didn't know where I needed to put it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these 2 screws in there. Then from the below, I'll be able to see where the blocking needs to go. But getting back to leveling this post, obviously this post is not level right now. That metal plate below there is going to allow us to tighten down these set screws. And as those set screws go down, we'll be able to tweak the post and get it nice and plumb. All right, so I've got my layout done. There's the end post, which I talked about before, and then there's a line post, which has holes that just go straight through it. And then there's corner posts out on the corners. Now, the other cool thing about this railing system is it's gonna have lighting in the cap of the rail shining down, which would be really nice. But in order to get that wiring up for that, I have to drill a hole in each of the line posts or the center post for each sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill a hole right through here. Problem is, this deck being a waterproof deck or being able to shed the water, this hole is directly in the center of a joint, which means we might have a little issue with water getting down through that hole. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill this hole and see how it works out. All right, so when I drilled my hole, I went kind of on an angle because I know that the trench that carries the water out is under this side. And it looks like I've got solid material there, so I didn't open that up. But one of the other things that I have an issue with is that the water collects obviously in these in this joint, and is going to run underneath of my post and through that hole. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to add a little bit of liquid flash underneath of this plate. So I'll just kind of pile it up here and here, just in case water comes from the other side, which I guess in this case it could, because the deck is actually going this way. And then I'll just take a little bit of this and just kind of seal up the inside of this to make sure that we had no problems. Hopefully this will solve my problem. So when I press this plate down, it should push that liquid flash into that groove and seal that up nicely. I use my square to make sure that these posts are nice and square, obviously, but then also to make sure they're set back the same distance from the edge of the deck. Okay, so the other screws that didn't get into the joists, I need to add some blocking for those. So I've gone ahead and cut some 4x4s that will go up in there and allow those screws to actually bite into some wood. Obviously, we'll attach these 4x4s to the joist so they won't go anywhere. I gotta go up there and take those screws out and put them back in. So right now we need to plumb all of these posts. And this one, usually I can do it with just kind of snugging down the lag bolts. But there is instances where I can't. So like this one is kind of all the way tightened up on the one side, but I still need this post to come a little further, which luckily for me, they've installed these set screws down here like I mentioned before, so we can just simply tighten those up and maybe even loosen these up a little bit so I can get this post just where I need it, and then tighten this set screw down And that'll keep this side of the post up a little bit more. I think I needed this one too. Yep, there we go. The other thing we needed to do was chase the wires through the center post on each side. That way, then the wiring can come up through the post for the underlit railing lights. These are LED strips that fit nicely into the top cap, but we needed to go ahead and get the wiring installed. With the post set and in place, then we can move on to the top rail. Now the top rail needs to be cut down to size, and there needs to be brackets installed on the sides of each post. Additionally, we needed to notch the post where any wiring was coming out of the top of the post. That way it could fit into that drink rail cap that's going to go on at the end. When it comes to mounting the top rail, we needed to install balusters first. And basically, since these sections are 6 feet wide, the horizontal cable can't span that far, so we needed to make sure that there was a baluster at each 3-foot interval at least. That's minimum. So we put them on the center of the top rail, or centered them in each span, mounting the baluster mount to the top rail as well as the deck itself. Then we could fit the baluster in place as we set the top rail and secure that in place before moving on. The last step of the railing structure is going to be the drink rail cap. Now the cool thing about the Chesapeake series from KeyLink is that you can mount any deck board you want to the top as a drink rail. That way you can accent your deck, you can go with the same color, or you can contrast it all together. Now we chose to go with the black aluminum rail with the textured finish from KeyLink because it just looks nice and sleek, and we wanted to minimize any colors, just kind of make the railing disappear. So the drink rail gets cut to size, which we needed to miter each of the corners, and then the corners actually fit together with essentially some blocks that go in between the drink rail to make sure you keep that miter nice and tight, and then that gets secured from below to the top rail itself. But before we could put that in place, we needed to make sure that the LED strips were installed and hanging free so that we could still get those screws in up above. With the drink rail installed, then we could move on to pressing those LED strips into place. Now obviously we needed to cut those down in order to fit those, and I was able to use some of the liquid flash in order to seal up those cut ends. Okay, so when it comes to the cable railing, now obviously you can see we've already got some of it done, but the thing that I love most about this railing is that the tensioning mechanism is actually hidden inside the post. So you don't have any kind of turnbuckles or anything like that. Everything is completely blacked out, including the cable itself. So the cool thing is you just slip this wire into the post and you push that in nicely. And then I've got some vice grips that I can use to kind of push it the rest of the way in. And then on the other side, you just use an Allen wrench and you tighten that up. So once we get this snug, then we can move over to the other side and finish tensioning it. All right, we're at the other side, and essentially we just want to tighten this up. Once you kind of get an idea of about how tight these should be, you can kind of just play them like a banjo and be able to make sure that you can get this to where it needs to be. And that looks good there. Now I would say one of the more time-consuming processes of this railing in general is just stringing up all the cable. Now I went ahead and fashioned a somewhat of a reel for this, but essentially you just feed it through these holes, starting at one end, and then you just go all the way around and push it in the hole. The nice thing is at the corner, they've got tubes in the corner that kind of feed the wire around the corner for you. So that makes the process a lot easier. I don't know how you do it otherwise. Kind of got to pre-bend this thing a little bit. This was one of those things where, as the first few that we did, it took a while to do, but once you get the hang of it, it goes a lot faster. So basically right now all I'm doing is tying all the lights together. So I'm running these wires that they have provided that will tie each of these posts, the 3 posts that we have running up to the lights together. And then we'll tie those into a control box and plug that in, and the wiring for the lights should be done. All right, so one of the last steps in the process of this deck, or as far as we're gonna take it right now, is gonna be covering up the joists, and we're going to do so with this 12-inch fascia board. I've already gone ahead and measured this front joist and cut the miters on those ends. We'll get that up there and then measure back to the house and cap that all with that fascia. In order to make sure that this joint stays nice and tight and doesn't come apart, because I've had that done before, I'm going to be using the PVC trim glue from Titebond, and then I'm going to be using their instant bond accelerator on the other board. And then hopefully when this joint comes together, it'll stay together. Okay, so that completes the deck project. It has turned out great. At least that completes it for now. There are a few things that we left off. One important thing is that this deck, since the water runs over the top of it and not through it, we need to flash this to the house. I've left this off because that will be part of the siding process. When the siding goes in, we'll make sure that that is nice and sealed up against the house, the bottom of the threshold, and all the way across. That way any water that runs down the siding or behind it will run out and over the deck. The other thing is lateral support. This deck right now doesn't have any lateral support, and I know I'm going to be hit with that in the comments. However, we're going to be adding that after the fact. We just wanted to make sure that we get everything trimmed out, the ceiling done underneath, and get everything finalized before or during the time that we add that lateral support. That way everything ties in nicely. So I hope you guys enjoyed this project, and until next time, be safe and happy building.